Welcome to On the Prowl. Panthers are poised, episode 29, with very special guest David Dwork from the Hockey News. David, welcome. Thank you for stopping by and thanks for being on again.
No, I appreciate the invite. It's good to be back on the show.
It's it's probably been one of the most interesting weeks in Panthers history. We start out with Seth Jones, and then we all get a surprise between 2:30 and 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, and Brad Marchand is now a Florida Panther. I said, who would have ever thought that?
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. It was kind of interesting being because all the media were kind of together waiting for Bill Zito to speak after the deadline hit at 3 o'clock, and that kind of came out of nowhere, and just kind of reacting in real time with everybody was pretty interesting and kind of a cool thing to be a part of. But it just kind of falls in line with everything that we've seen from Bill Zito since he came in 5.5 years ago, and that is he's knows what this team needs, not afraid to make big moves, and has a propensity of making moves that don't seem to hurt the team that badly in terms of their win now motive. It's been pretty impressive what he's had to give up without taking anything away really from the team that he's put together that's shooting for their second straight Stanley Cup. So it'll be cool to see how it plays out. Hopefully it works out for them, but man, has it been fun.
It really has. And I think he alluded to it, and I don't know if it was it may have been in the press conference with Seth Jones. I'm not really sure, but he alluded to, people think that he's the one, he doesn't do this in a vacuum. All the other former, general managers who are his assistants, plus his scouting staff, he had mentioned something along the lines. He said, it's kind of like it gets real loud, it gets real boisterous in there, but the goal and the mission is all the same. And what they do, they equip him to be able to make these decisions because, again, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. He makes these decisions real time. And he felt, and you heard him as well as I did, that he thinks Brad has enough gas left in the tank. And I think, case in point, we got to see him play at the Four Nations, and I thought Brad played real well during Four Nations.
No, I agree. It was weird being at the TD Garden and hearing Brad Marchand get booed. Little did I know at the time that's just something that we're going to be getting used to a lot more often. No, but he clearly still has quite a bit of gas left in the tank. I mean, he's already got 20 goals, 20 plus goals this season. He's put up great numbers throughout his career. Obviously, it's weird the perspective like changing. I think his game is kind of mellowed out a bit over the past few years compared to a lot of the controversy that would follow him around for quite a while when his career first got started into Boston Stanley Cup and their competitive years. No, I think it's going to be a great fit. I really do. And I think to your other point about Bill Zito, where he came from, I think just his career to this point brought him to a place in Florida where he wanted to be a part of a collaborative family of hockey minds that really could come together and put their collective best foot forward. I mean, you think, he started an agency with Marcus Leto, or not Marcus Leto, I'm sorry, way back in the day, came up as an agent, got a job in a front office, was the AGM in Columbus, became their key negotiating guy. So he's been in all these different situations where he's had to collaborate and work with other people. And it just kind of has come together here in Florida, and the results kind of speak for themselves.
Well, what was real interesting was it was Friday afternoon, and I'm good friends with Colby, Guy too, and Alex, and George. I talked to all you guys, and I pinged him, and I said, basically, so you think we're done? And he said, yeah. He said, basically, we got Seth Jones, and Seth Jones was really the piece that was missing for the Panthers. That right-handed defenseman, which are far and few between. We got him, and it's a solid fit. Really doesn't see anything else happening. And then, of course, we know what happened right after that. So, and Colby said this tweet didn't age well right after he put that out there. So, with that being said, your thoughts on the other pickups, and I also kind of want to touch on it too, because I know you're a goaltender at heart, and VTech last night. I mean, oh my gosh. And I said this before he even played, before he even probably put a uniform on. I said, it's going to make a world of difference for him when he has a good defense playing in front of him.
Yeah, and his career to this point has kind of followed on that because he played on a much better team in Jersey, a really good team in Washington a few years back, and he was a very solid goaltender. He went to, the things kind of went south in New Jersey. He went to San Jose, which is, we've seen what's happened in San Jose the last few years. Fun team this year a little bit, but still can't keep the puck out of their net that well. With what happened with Mackenzie Blackwood, he put up, marginal numbers, but he had some really good games there, goes to Colorado and takes off. So now, similar mindset with Vitek Vanacek. He's a veteran guy that succeeded in this league. He succeeded in defensive systems before when he played over in Washington. So now he comes to the Panthers, and, the results kind of, at least on night one, listening to him after the game tell us, the second chances are getting cleaned up. The lanes are getting blocked. Guys are they're taking away opportunities. So it must be night and day for him to go from a situation like San Jose to come to Florida where they're very much defense first, and to pull a shutout in his first game, I thought was a pretty cool welcome to the team.
Yeah, one of only 3 Panthers to have done that in their debut, which is absolutely fantastic. And and Zito is, I think, one of the things I see him as famous as for these, getting these guys who are a perfect fit for the Panthers, but yet are under everybody's radar. Strum, for example, okay. Watching him last night when he played, I think he was like 70% on faceoffs last night. I mean, it just, and I said, you know what? Okay, here we are. Let's say we're in a game 7, the finals again, and you want to you put him out there to win a critical faceoff. Okay, you have a guy that you pretty much can just about bet the bank that he's going to do that, and it's so critical. And he had several decent chances to score last night as well too.
Yeah, he did have a couple of grade A chances. And after the game, I actually asked him specifically about that, just in terms of, it's your first night with the team, and already you guys are putting together some of these really nice passing plays and coming up with looks like some chemistry right off the bat. And, he kind of, in a very elegant way, kind of pooped on his time a little bit in San Jose. Just the way that he was like, well, it's nice where, you can put out a great effort, be responsible on the penalty kill, and your team doesn't lose, and you feel like, no, my effort kind of went for no. And he talked about Vanacek as well. He's like, you could go out there, but if you're on a team where you're giving up over 30 shots a game, you could make a lot of great saves and have a lot of great games, but you're still going to give up a lot of goals just by volume. So I think just in terms of, as you said, the fit, it's hard for a great faceoff guy not to be a great fit on a playoff team. I always, the first thought that always comes to mind is the 94 Rangers when they made all those moves at the deadline. One of the big ones that didn't get talked about a lot was they brought in Craig McTavish, who was this amazing faceoff guy, and he won big faceoff after big faceoff for them on that run that they went when they got, against the Devils and then up against Vancouver. So always when you have a great faceoff guy, it's so key. And the Panthers, they had Kevin Stenlund last year, who was great defensive zones on, great on the PK, and now they've kind of essentially thought that they've replaced him with Nico Sturm, adding already to a forward group that was felt to be deeper than last season. So, man, they are primed. It's no surprise that they're viewed as the favorites right now. If you look at the sports books, it just kind of follows along this amazing path that Panther fans have been able to go on the last few years of experiencing amazing new highs that they've never had before. President's Trophy, Stanley Cup final back-to-back year. We win the Stanley Cup, and now it's just kind of like all happening at this progression, and always just go back. Bill Zito.
Yeah. And, and I saw a stat, Money Puck, they had the Panthers ranked number 1 in power rankings. That came out today. I saw that, and I was like, okay. One of the other things, and I want to touch on Seth Jones a little bit here. He's had a couple of games as a Panther under his belt, and he's getting so comfortable with the system, jumping into plays. And I think one of the things that really made a difference for him, the weight of the world is off his shoulders now. Because when he was with the Blackhawks, they put so much pressure on him. And here he can go and be himself. And I said to another one of my friends, I said, if he can come back to play kind of like he did when he was with the Blue Jackets, and just kind of, amp that up. And I've seen it already from him. I mean, really. And he came close a couple times scoring as well, too. So he's really impressed me.
Yeah, it's funny how they kind of follow suit with a lot of guys that have been able to come to South Florida and escape that kind of pressure, whether it's Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhart, OEL last season when he came here. It's guys kind of just fall into the background a little bit. Or even, Reinhart, 57 goals last year, but there was no pressure, no attention like that on him, which I guess is just kind of a compliment, if you want to call it that, to South Florida and not being the cauldron of media or whatever that like New York City or Toronto or those cities would be. But good for these guys, and we'll see how. I'm now that's just kind of making me think ahead a little bit. Like, what's going to happen when Brad Marchand throws his Panthers sweater on in a week or two, and now he's going to be a big name. Matthew Tkachuk is going to come back into the lineup in like 6 weeks or whatever it's going to be into the playoffs. So all this star power. Sasha Barkov, like he's the one that they looked at before, any of this, right? That's where the attention was. That's where it wasn't going to Bennett and Reinhart and those guys. And then Tkachuk comes in, and it's just pretty amazing what they've built here. It's really cool. And I always just go back to the appreciation of watching this team grow over the 30 years. And now I guess is their time.
Well, and I've said this before, I've been watching hockey since 1972. And when you get the combination of a great ownership, a great general manager, coaches, assistant coaches, players, staff, and even announcers, and even all of you who cover them so well in the media. I mean, it's rare that you get this combination of things. And I put a tweet out there that I said, enjoy this, because it's very rare that you get all of this. Okay. And like you said, we're not in the cauldron of, say, like a New York City or a Los Angeles or Toronto, where, there's all these expectations here. And, one of the things that I also have to say is this too. Paul Maurice has always said, and I know he said this in one form or another, that the regular season is a marathon and not a sprint. Okay. And he knows when it's time to go ahead and put your foot down on the gas pedal and start going. And we've seen some of this recently. Okay. For example, the games against Calgary and the game against Columbus. I mean, they were suffocating. Columbus and Calgary couldn't get in the offensive zone. I mean, they'd shoot it in and they couldn't follow up. They couldn't do that because they were suffocating them. It was just a master plan from Paul Maurice.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said that he understands that it's a marathon and not a sprint. That's why when they have situations like what happened in December and January, where half the team is either hurt or sick, and they're on this crazy road schedules where they're barely staying at home for more than a day or two at a time. Like, yeah, the team is probably going to struggle at those times, and it's going to be okay. And that, they're rounding back into form now. So I think he really does have his finger on the pulse of this team, much like the front office does. Now that they're getting towards the playoffs and they're playing into their form. I mean, like, as you said, the games that they played the last week, that's scary if you're an opponent. And these aren't bottom feeding teams that they're doing that either. These are either playoff teams or teams on the cusp of a playoff spot that have something significant to fight for. And the Panthers are making them look silly. It's got to be frustrating on their behalf. And, I remember like thinking as I watched the game against Columbus, like, man, if I'm a Columbus fan, this sucks, because every time the puck's on their stick, there's a Panther guy on top of him. It must feel like there's like two Panthers for every one guy on the ice. And that's just Paul Maurice's styles being played to a perfection right now. And when you think about the additions, and Seth Jones is only going to get more comfortable and look better in these systems, Matthew Tkachuk eventually will be back. You had Marchand, who, it would seem like he's a perfect fit for the Panthers as the kind of player that he is and the kind of way that Paul Maurice wants his forwards to play. So it's pretty cool to think about it, as you said.
So, and I'm going to throw this question out here. After all the dust is settled from the trades, okay, we have some games coming up. We got 2 back-to-backs the rest of the month, and then April's around the corner. So we're not that far from playoffs. Do you think the Panthers are poised to make a deep run in the playoffs this year?
Oh, no doubt. As long as they, nothing unforeseen happens, nobody else gets hurt or anything like that. Like they are poised, primed more than ever. I mean, this is probably going to be to this point. Feels like we've been saying this a lot over the past few seasons, but the best Panthers team that we've seen. Once, if everybody's there, when you add Tkachuk and Marchand and Seth Jones to what they've already built, the only significant piece that they removed was Spencer Knight, who like significant to the team in terms of the future, but for the present, it's Bob's net when the playoff gets here. Like, so the way that they've added without subtracting, this Panthers team is so stacked right now. The only unknown is what are they going to look like when everybody's there and they're playing together. But as long as that's not a catastrophe, which is like, how could it be? They are, they are the favorites to win the Stanley Cup right now. If they don't make a deep playoff run, it will be a disappointment. And that's the kind of thing you should hold, pump your chest, Panther fans. Like, you are the favorites. It's your cup to lose right now, which is welcome to the big time. As no welcome. You won a Stanley Cup, but that's it.
I agree 100%. So playoffs are coming up. All right. And, typically, a lot of times, and I'm not going to talk about the 1 versus 8, all that kind of stuff. Everybody has their own take on that. But who do you think the Panthers, and I'm going to throw this out here, fear the most in the East? Okay. Is it somebody like the Hurricanes or the Maple Leafs or Washington or Tampa, or who do you see as being probably one of the roadblocks, if you will, towards moving on for a cup run?
It depends. Like, you look at a team like Washington, and like where Florida could struggle with Washington would be if they get sucked into playing their game, which we see happen occasionally during the regular season, where the Panthers will kind of get, end up playing a bit more of a rush game, which is absolutely what they don't want to do. So if they get sucked into a series like that, where something goes sideways and all of a sudden, like, they're not playing to their style, that could be bad. However, that probably is not going to happen. I wouldn't, it's hard to see a Paul Maurice playoff team that's now going to be going into their 3rd straight playoff year together that knows what to do when the time comes. Case in point, just going back to the Stanley Cup final last year and how they were able to snap back into form. It's hard for me to see that, but that would be concerning if they got there. So then you get into the concern of, like, okay, playing a team like Carolina or a team like Tampa Bay, one that can kind of try to throw your style a little bit back in your face, and that has a little bit more depth. Tampa Bay certainly added. They're pushing for it. They've been playing great. Vasi's looking like Vasi. Those teams are, a bit more of those playoff ready team that you would see to play that style. Washington almost reminds me a little bit of the Panthers President's Trophy winning team that was tons of fun, obviously a lot of success, but when the playoffs got around, things changed a little bit. Obviously the Panthers didn't have a guy named Alex Ovechkin, so always the X factor, but I think at the end of the day, it's just going to come down to, can the Panthers continue to play their style? If they can continue to tight gap up, forecheck, and do their thing, they should have the advantage on, anybody they're going to face right now. They've built a hell of a roster.
They really have. And, conversely, I'm going to ask this question about a supposed, going to the finals again. Who do you think they would match up well against in the West?
Match up well against?
Who would be, let's say, where you're going to probably go maybe 5, 6, 7 games kind of thing, where it's an even kind of a match.
I'd love to see them go up against Winnipeg, just because it's a little bit of contrasting styles, but not so much. And you've also got like solid defense. You've got speed. You've got great goaltending. Like, it feels like it would be a pretty fun matchup. A team like Colorado, scares the hell out of anybody just because of not just the star power, but the elite, like top tier Hart Trophy, Norris Trophy type star power that they have, which could always put you over the top. And then I think Mackenzie Blackwood, the addition there, has been a huge X factor for them and something that really helped turn their season around. Edmonton's always a scary X factor. Obviously right now they're struggling, but you see what happened like last year, how they can get hot. Vegas, they've, not quite to the extent of Colorado, but they've still got some excellent players and they're playing some good hockey lately. Aiden Hill's been playing very well. But at the end of the day, if I got to pick, I just realized I didn't mention Dallas after the moves that they made. I'd like to see Winnipeg, Florida. I think that could go like 6, 7 games, I think. And then obviously Paul Maurice, that connection. So that would be probably a pretty fun series to go down.
I agree. My concern with Winnipeg is, they've had an incredible season this year, but it seems like every year when they hit the first round of the playoffs, it's just like it's like somebody's burst the bubble, all the air is let out, and they just are flat when it comes to that. And I think, this goes back to, what we talked about with Paul Maurice, how, the regular season is a marathon and not a sprint. And you see some of these teams just like going a house of fire. Because I know maybe about a month or so ago, Edmonton was on this just tear, and they were just mowing everybody down night after night. And then now all of a sudden it's just like, boom, they're hitting this cycle right now, and you're seeing that. And that's one of the things I think Paul tries to avoid at all costs. Because there's been a lot of games this year. For example, it was a game against Edmonton here at Sunrise, and he said in his, and obviously you were there to hear this, but he said, the last 8 minutes of the game I was pleased with. The rest of the game, no, we weren't. We didn't play well. And and I'm kind of like looking at myself. I said, wow, okay, that he is so in tune and in touch with that team. It's not funny. And it makes a lot of sense when you hear something like that. Conversely, there's been games this year where we've lost, like that game against Washington, where, a couple of bad bounces and boom, we've lost that game. But he's pleased with how they played. So, and I think, we kind of have to balance these kind of things out, going full pedal to the metal and letting your foot off the gas a little bit, but playing well, knowing, still playing well, but maybe not getting those breaks that you want and losing some games. Bottom line is you want to put yourself in a good position when it comes the middle of April, when playoffs are rolling around. So, so we can do well. Right now, I think the way things look, I think we end up against, Columbus right now. The way the schedule kind of looks right now. And, and I got to say this, because I lived in Columbus for 30 years. I was a season ticket holder up there. I know a lot about the organization and them, and I'm really happy that they've had this massive turnaround this year. And I said when they hired Dean, I said, you know what, he's gonna get them back into gear, and I think he's done a great job with that. They're a team not to take lightly, but you can see the difference when we watched the game the other night on the Panthers compared to the Blue Jackets, and just their level and their poise and where they were at. And you could kind of hear it. And I did see some things from some of the Blue Jackets said, this is kind of like, they didn't come out and say it, but this is kind of like where we want to end up being, where the Panthers are, and get to that point.
I would think that's what most teams are saying right now. The way that the Panthers have built up, like, not only a successful team that plays playoff style hockey and that has proven that it works, a team that has built a roster that is going to be together and be able to succeed in their prime for years to come, guys that have taken team friendly deals. Like, there are so many boxes that this team has checked off that any team would want to model themselves around. And I think that's kind of the way that it looks right now, is the Panthers have become the team of the league in so many ways, which hearing and saying that in the moment is like, holy crap, I just said that. And it's like the truth about the Panthers right now. Like, they've come such a long way. But yeah, any team would be thinking that. And I think, kind of to your point about Paul Maurice, and like even he said the other day that, like, yeah, we're playing great right now, but we've also got a hellish schedule coming up with a lot of back-to-backs, and we know that we're going to have some ebbs and flows between now and the playoffs. Like, that's just, and he like you said, he gets it. He knows, like, as when he needs to get them at their best, that's what's important. And that's what they're going to try to do. And, as long as they don't have anything unforeseen happen, it should be falling right into the way that they want it to be. But yeah, it's just exciting to think about what's going to happen with the playoffs, just because this team is just built for success. It's fun.
Oh, they are. And, one of the things too, that I try to do, I look at it from, podcaster's perspective, and I also look at it from a fan's perspective, and I see a lot of comments from fans out there that are saying, oh, they're not playing well, and this, and throughout the course of the season. And sometimes, I won't jump in all the time, but sometimes I do jump in and I say, look, I said, remember the season, and, talking about being a marathon versus a sprint, you're going to have ebbs and flows during the season. That's going to happen. For example, we have these 2 back-to-backs coming up this month, and, that's just the nature of the beast. That's just part of how the schedule is. We have to deal with it, and they will deal with it. But the important thing is, and I think Paul has said this before too, to put ourselves in a good position when it comes playoff time. And they are going to be putting themselves in a good position when it comes playoff time.
No, undoubtedly, as long as, I feel like I'm kind of keep repeating myself, but as long as they don't have anything bad happen, it's lined up like they should be right where they want to be. Like, if there's a reason that they falter, it's going to be at their own fault. Like they're going to trip up in some way, because it's hard to see another team coming in and figuring out a way to out Panthers the Panthers right now, based off of the fact that they've perfected this style and the roster, the depth that they're going to be throwing at you in the playoffs, and not just at the forwards, it's both ends. Like their defense is stacked right now, and Seth Jones is just going to continue to get better and more comfortable. You mentioned before that he's jumping up more and more. Like he was really like getting involved in the play last night, Sunday here, last night when the Panthers, God, who did they beat last night? Buffalo. When they beat the Sabres, like he was kind of like, I think I was talking to George in the press box, George Richards, like how the way he can get up and down the ice with in so few strides, it's like Barkov-esque. It's just like so smooth, the way that he can get up and down the ice so quickly and so easily, because he's so big, and these guys have these long reaches with their sticks. So it's just going to be really cool to see play out, man. I'm just pumped. And what do we got, like 6 weeks now? So let's just get there, get healthy, and whoever they end up with, because like right now it could be Columbus, but that playoff race is so tight. And Panther fans to probably appreciate also being able to watch something like that from the outside, not have to worry about being involved in that stressful playoff race situation, be at the top, just kind of looking down like, oh, let's see, who are we going to play against? Like whoever it is, like, I don't think they care. Once it all going back to that first round against Boston when they were the 8th seed, like from that point on, Panthers don't care who they're playing in a playoff series.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I agree. Well, I came across the video the other day of when the Blackhawks beat the Penguins, and it was back 2 years ago, and that propelled, the Panthers into the playoffs that year. And, I think they said one of the most important hockey games ever. And it was so, watching that through, and it was very interesting. I'd never seen that video before. It was out on YouTube, and it made a lot of sense. And it really kind of like was a real catalyst and a real, a real awakening, I think, for people. And also, I'm going to say this too, before we kind of wrap things up here, is, the South Florida has, it's always been a wonderful sports hotbed here. But, right now, the Panthers are king down there. Okay. I mean, you look at the Heat, you look at the Marlins, you look at the Dolphins. I mean, the Hurricanes, you can probably say for college football, but, for professional sports, they're number one down there right now, and with good reason.
Yeah, I think, you're kind of singing right to exactly what South Florida kind of has been as a sports town. They love a winner, and the Panthers right now they're the talk of the town. They're winning. They won a championship. You can go to a game. It's a popular thing to do. Like that's South Florida. Like at its roots, we're a football town. And I believe that, right now football kind of is like, I mean, well, the Canes were okay last year until they weren't. And, we'll see what Carson Beck can do this year. And, the Dolphins are always, if the Dolphins ever can have this, any kind of similarly success to the Panthers, the Dolphins put a couple of successful playoff seasons together, this town will be draped in aqua and orange. I have zero doubt about that, no matter what else is going on. If the Dolphins are successful, the Heat and the Panthers could win simultaneous championships against the same city, like the rival teams. No. But that being said, the Panthers are absolutely, like right now, the king of the town. And they've earned it. Like they've proven to every sports fan and every casual person that you can come to a Panthers game. You're going to have fun. You're going to see probably a win. It's the it thing to do sports wise right now. And they've earned their spot atop those rankings for sure.
They really have. And on a personal note, to you, to George, to Alex, to Colby, all you guys do just such a great job. And I read all your columns every day. I'm like, my lunchtime, it's like, I'm going down the list and going through your columns and everything. You guys do stellar work. And I know a lot of times you get the rear end of things from fans out there, and they're pinging you and they're saying this and they're saying that. But, I want to let you guys know, and I've let George know this, and I've let Colby and Alex know this as well, too. I really appreciate you guys. You guys do a great job, and for me as a podcaster and also as a fan, I really appreciate your content and really appreciate you. You are our eyes and ears when they're at the practice facility, during press conferences, during games. We get insight from you guys. You guys do such a great job. So just keep up the great work, David.
No, I really appreciate that. I'm glad that, you've told those guys as well. And, I'll also throw like Jordan McPherson and my podcast host, Roy Bellamy, and obviously like Jameson and Rob and the guys that work for the team that do a great job too. Like, it's a small but very dedicated and passionate group that cover the Panthers, and we appreciate it, like, for sure. At least on my behalf, like, I do my best to just kind of ignore all the negativity, because there's just way too much negativity in the world in general. So the positivity is very much appreciated.
Well, you're very welcome. Just keep up the great work. We're definitely going to touch base, as the playoffs progress, and have you back on. Thank you for your time tonight. We're ready and we're poised for the playoffs. So, and thanks everybody for tuning in. And it's always a great day for Florida Panthers hockey. Time to hunt. Take care, everybody.